Look, I need to be clear about something right away. War has been boring for centuries. Gloriously, magnificently boring. My name is Diplomatic Envoy Krax'Tul of the 7th Arm of the Galactic Confederation, and after 216 standard cycles in diplomatic service, I was convinced I'd seen everything the universe had to offer. Wars started and ended with mathematical precision. Treaties were drafted by algorithms optimized for fairness. And battles? Battles were fought entirely by machines. No civilized species sends their biological forms into combat anymore. That's just not how things are done. The Galactic Confederation spans 87 sentient species across 12,000 star systems, and every single one of them has the good sense to let their technology do the dirty work. The Viridians deploy hive mind drone swarms that can dismantle an enemy fleet in minutes. The Korlax battle spheres can terraform a hostile planet before breakfast. Even the gas-based Zephyrians have automated plasma conduits that can slice through battleship hulls like they're made of air, which, to them, they practically are. The pinnacle of civilization, Ambassador Grelt Nax loves to pontificate during our council meetings, his eye stalks waving with philosophical gravitas, is the moment when a species removes itself from the barbarism of physical combat. This sentiment greeted me every morning on a plaque in the Grand Hall, etched in 7,000 languages. Civilization is measured by the distance between its citizens and violence. So you can imagine the reaction when the exploratory vessel Boundless Curiosity stumbled upon a little backwater planet called Earth. Actually, you don't have to imagine it, because I still have the recordings, and they're absolutely priceless. They're doing what? That was High Chancellor Plex of the Zorbian hegemony, usually so composed that I'd privately wondered if he was actually a very sophisticated AI in an expensive suit. Fighting their wars, personally. The science officer's voice cracked as she delivered her report, with their actual bodies. Stunned silence followed. Then the wave of disgust. Then the security debates. Then the very heated arguments about whether these primitives should be quarantined or studied from a safe distance. And now, 20 Earth years later, the Galactic Confederation was finally extending an invitation to these humans to attend the Centennial Peace Summit. The decision hadn't been unanimous, but curiosity eventually won out over caution. They're carbon-based bipeds from a high-gravity death world with exactly one natural satellite and perpetual territorial conflicts, read the official briefing. Approach with caution and calibrate universal translators for frequent use of informal language patterns. The part they left out of the briefing was that humans were the only known species in the galaxy who still engaged in what we'd all considered the ultimate taboo, physical combat. Most species had evolved past it at least 50,000 years before achieving interstellar travel. The humans? They'd apparently skipped that step entirely. As I made my final preparations for the summit, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of creatures would deliberately put themselves in harm's way when they had the technology to build perfectly capable war machines. Perhaps I was about to find out more than I'd bargained for. First contact with Earth had been, to put it mildly, a colossal mess. The official records describe it as a regrettable series of misunderstandings arising from unexpected cultural differences. Those of us with security clearance know the far less diplomatic truth. The exploratory vessel Boundless Curiosity had followed standard first contact protocol, establish orbit, scan for signs of advanced civilization, and send down a small autonomous drone for initial observation. The drone was programmed to avoid detection while gathering cultural and linguistic data. Unfortunately, it landed in the middle of a military exercise in something called Montana, which the records indicate is a particularly empty region of Earth. Within 27 minutes, the drone was located, surrounded, and then this part still makes the High Council shudder, physically dismantled by humans using primitive tools. They took it apart. Captain Lortex had reported genuine shock in all 3 of her voice boxes, with their actual appendages. No automated systems. No remote manipulation. They just touched it. The subsequent diplomatic exchange had been equally disastrous. When the Boundless Curiosity established communication, they requested to speak with Earth's automated defense systems. The human military leaders were confused, then suspicious, then downright hostile when they realized we assumed they wouldn't handle their own defense matters. You want to talk to our robots? The human general had apparently laughed. Next, you'll be asking to speak to our toasters. This was followed by 20 years of limited contact, cautious trade agreements, and an Earth kept firmly at arm's length from the Galactic Confederation, a sort of interstellar probation period. Now they were finally sending a representative to the Peace Summit. Commander Jack Cooper, according to my files, was a decorated military veteran with extensive diplomatic training. His psychological profile described him as adaptable, pragmatic, with a marked tendency toward irreverent humor during stress situations. Whatever that meant. The real problem was that most of the Council still viewed humans as essentially savages with spaceships. The term Deathworlders had taken on an almost mythical quality in certain circle species born on planets so inherently hostile that they evolved to be natural warriors. It was theorized, though never openly stated, that humans hadn't automated their warfare simply because they enjoyed it too much. They're a statistical anomaly, xenosociologist Welv had informed me during my briefing. Every other known species automated combat at roughly the same point in their development, when their technology made direct participation unnecessary. Humans developed the technology but kept putting themselves in harm's way. It's unprecedented. High Chancellor Plex had been more direct. Don't let them touch anything important. As my shuttle prepared to dock with the summit station, I reviewed my instructions one final time. Commander Cooper was to be treated with all diplomatic courtesies, but kept under discreet observation at all times. His quarters had been equipped with triple the standard security measures, and his access to station systems was severely restricted. Just don't let him know he's being contained, the security chief had instructed. These humans are surprisingly perceptive about such things.
I was about to meet a genuine Deathworlder. Despite 2 centuries of diplomatic service, I found myself experiencing something I hadn't felt in decades: nervousness. The Grand Summit Station hung like a crystalline snowflake against the indigo backdrop of the Cygnus Nebula, its transparent spires and gravity-defying architecture a testament to the technological prowess of the Galactic Confederation. As my shuttle approached the main docking bay, I spotted the human vessel Block E, functional craft that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never heard that aesthetics existed. Earth Diplomatic Vessel Handshake announced the automated docking system. Please proceed to Reception Area Gamma 7. I arrived just in time to see Commander Jack Cooper step through the airlock. He was underwhelming, if I'm being honest. Average height for a human, which made him shorter than most Confederation species, with close cropped hair and what I would later learn was called a 5-o'clock shadow. His uniform was navy blue with minimal decorations. Apparently humans didn't subscribe to the Confederation custom of wearing one's entire service history on one's clothing. Commander Cooper, I extended my greeting appendages in the universal gesture of welcome. I am Diplomatic Envoy Krax'Tul. Welcome to the Centennial Peace Summit. Cooper smiled, a disconcertingly wide display of teeth that I knew intellectually was friendly but still triggered some primal warning system in my cerebral cortex. Just Jack is fine, he said, offering his hand. I hesitated only briefly before accepting the customary human greeting ritual, trying not to think about how those same appendages were potentially used for combat. Where's the rest of your delegation? I asked, looking behind him. You're looking at it, Cooper Jack replied with a shrug. Earth figured one representative was plenty for our first rodeo. I guided him through the cavernous reception hall where representatives from dozens of worlds mingled. Robotic servers glided between groups, offering refreshments calibrated to each species' biochemistry. And where are your security units? I asked, attempting casual conversation. Jack looked confused. My what now? Your automated defense systems, I clarified. Your combat robot bots? He laughed, a barking sound that caused a nearby Melusian diplomat to recoil slightly. We don't generally bring weapons to peace summits, Krax. Tends to send the wrong message. Before I could explain the misunderstanding, we were approached by Ambassador Zrel of the Phalanx Directorate, his ceremonial hover platform bringing him to eye level with Jack. So this is a genuine human, Zrel announced, as if Jack were a museum exhibit. How fascinating. And you handle your own physical security. How quaint, like watching history in motion. Jack's smile tightened slightly. Where I come from, Ambassador, we consider it rude to talk about someone in the third person when they're standing right in front of you. I quickly introduced Technix, the station's chief engineer, hoping to diffuse the awkwardness. The diminutive Corellian buzzed with excitement, her translucent wings vibrating so quickly they became almost invisible. Your species builds such interesting machines, Technix exclaimed. So over-engineered, so many redundant systems. You design as if expecting failure. We call that good planning, Jack replied with another of those toothy smiles. The reception continued with similar interactions, most officials politely curious, some openly condescending. Jack handled it all with what I would come to recognize as characteristic human adaptability. He answered questions about Earth's primitive approaches to various issues with good humor, though I caught occasional flashes of irritation. The only genuinely positive encounter came when we met Maeve O'Riordan, a Proximan xenoanthropologist who had actually visited Earth. Commander Cooper, she exclaimed, her color-shifting skin flushing a warm gold, the Proximan expression of delight. I spent 3 Earth years at your University of Chicago. Your planet has the most fascinating cultural diversity I've ever studied. Jack's posture immediately relaxed. Finally, someone who doesn't look at me like I just crawled out of primordial ooze. Their conversation was interrupted by the station-wide announcement system. Attention all delegates. The Centennial Peace Summit will commence in the Grand Chamber in 1 standard hour. Please complete security protocols and take your assigned positions. As we made our way toward the chamber, the station lights flickered just once, but enough to make everyone pause. That's odd, Technix said, antennae twitching nervously. The station has 7 redundant power systems. Probably just a calibration issue, I assured everyone, though something in my gut felt wrong. 2 centuries of diplomatic service teaches you to recognize when things aren't quite right. The feeling was confirmed moments later when the station security chief, a towering draconian named Lortax, approached us with uncharacteristic speed. We have a situation, he growled quietly. Someone has penetrated our systems. All automated security protocols are being systematically disabled. Cyber attack? Jack asked immediately. No, Lortax replied, his scaled face unreadable. Yes. Physical infiltration. Someone is on the station accessing junction points manually. But that's impossible, Ambassador Zrel sputtered. The automated defenses would. Are compromised, Lordax finished. We're running blind. As if to underscore his point, the lights went out entirely, plunging the station into darkness broken only by emergency guide lights along the floor. In the dim blue glow, I saw something I wasn't prepared for. While everyone else looked confused or frightened, Commander Jack Cooper's expression had become intensely focused, almost eager. Well, he said, rolling his shoulders with a series of small popping sounds that made me wince, looks like this peace summit just got interesting. The emergency lighting cast eerie blue shadows across the reception hall as panic began to spread among the delegates. Ambassador Zrel's hover platform dropped a concerning 30 centimeters before its backup systems engaged. Technix's wings beat so rapidly they created an audible hum. Even the normally impassive Lord Hax looked unsettled. All defensive drones are offline, the security chief reported, checking his neural interface. Communication systems compromised. Internal sensors non-functional. How is that possible? I demanded. The security systems are isolated from the main network specifically to prevent this kind of breach. Someone who knows the station's architecture, Lord Axe growled. An inside job. Jack had been quietly assessing the situation, his eyes scanning the room with methodical precision. What about manual overrides? He asked. Manual? Lord Tax repeated the word as if it were in a foreign language. Our systems we don't generally. You don't have backup systems that can be operated without automation. Jack asked incredulously. The silence that followed was answer enough. Right, Jack said, clapping his hands together with startling loudness. First things first, we need to secure the delegates and establish a defensive perimeter. With what? Ambassador Zrel demanded. Our security drones are offline. Jack looked around at the panicked faces. With us, he said simply. With people. The concept was so alien that several delegates simply stared at him blankly. You mean physically defend ourselves? Technix's translator barely managed to convey her horror at the suggestion. That's exactly what I mean, Jack confirmed. Krax, who here has any combat training at all? I hesitated. The concept of physical combat training has been obsolete for most Confederation species for thousands of years. Jack's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on determination. Okay, new plan. Everyone needs to stay together. Lordax, you're with me. You at least look like you could throw a punch if you had to. Technics, if we get you to a control junction, can you work on restoring the security systems? The engineer's wings fluttered nervously. Why, yes, but I would need to access the main engineering hub. Then that's our first objective, Jack decided. Everyone else stays here under guard until we restore the systems. As the impromptu plan came together, I found myself watching this human with growing fascination. He had transformed from a diplomatic curiosity into something else entirely, a natural leader in crisis. Wait, Maeve approached, her skin now a determined amber. I've studied Earth combat techniques. I can help. Jack gave her an appraising look. You're trained to fight? I'm trained to understand human fighting, she clarified. Academic knowledge, not practical experience. Better than nothing, Jack nodded. You're with us. As we prepared to leave, the lights flickered again, and the station's artificial gravity fluctuated momentarily, causing several delegates to float briefly before crashing back to the floor. They're going after life support next, Lord Tax warned. Jack turned to address the room. Everyone stay calm. We're going to fix this. As we moved toward the exit, Ambassador Zrell's incredulous voice rose above the murmurs. You're going to physically confront whoever is doing this without automated assistance. That's barbaric. Jack paused at the doorway. Maybe he conceded with a grim smile. But right now, barbaric is all you've got. We made our way through darkened corridors, guided by emergency lighting and Lord Axe's knowledge of the station layout. Jack moved with a peculiar grace that I hadn't noticed before alert but relaxed, constantly scanning our surroundings. Have you done this before? I asked quietly. Led a manual defense operation on a disabled space station filled with aliens who've never thrown a punch? He chuckled softly. Can't say that I have. But the principles are the same everywhere. Secure, assess, counterattack. We encountered our first obstacle at a sealed bulkhead. Technics examined the door mechanism. The electronic lock is fried, but there's a manual release. It requires significant physical force. Jack stepped forward without hesitation. Stand back. What followed was my first real demonstration of human physical capabilities. Jack positioned himself, took a deep breath, and applied force to the manual override in a way that made the muscles in his arms visibly strain against his uniform. With a grunt of effort and a metallic groan, the mechanism gave way, and the bulkhead door slid open. How did you do that? Technics asked, wings fluttering in astonishment. Jack rotated his shoulder with a slight wince. High-gravity planet. Remember, we're built sturdy. As we continued through the station, we began to encounter signs of deliberate sabotage, destroyed control panels, disabled security cameras, and most alarmingly, the occasional deactivated security drones slumped against walls like discarded toys. Whoever did this knew exactly where to hit us, Lord Axe observed grimly. When we finally reached the engineering hub, we found the doors barricaded from within. Jack pressed his ear against the door. Multiple hostiles inside, he whispered. At least 3, maybe 4. How can you possibly know that? I asked. I can hear them breathing, Jack replied matter-of-factly. It's different patterns, different positions in the room. The casual revelation of this seemingly superhuman ability sent a shiver through our small group. What other capabilities had we underestimated about humans? We need a distraction, Jack decided, looking around for options. His eyes settled on a fire suppression system on the wall. Perfect. What followed was an improvised plan that involved redirecting the suppression system to flood the engineering hub with harmless but disorienting foam. While the saboteurs were distracted, Jack, in a display of physical power that left us all speechless, forced open the secondary maintenance hatch. The resulting confrontation was brief but illuminating. The saboteurs, members of a fringe political faction called the Purists who opposed Earth's inclusion in galactic politics, had expected to face only automated resistance. They were completely unprepared for a human who could physically overpower them. As Jack subdued the last of the infiltrators with what he later described as basic hand-to-hand techniques, nothing fancy, I caught Maeve's expression. Her skin had shifted to a deep, appreciative purple. Now you see, she said quietly, why I find humans so fascinating. With the engineering hub secured, technics immediately set to work restoring the station's critical systems. The saboteurs, 3 Avarians and a Centaurian, all confirmed members of the Purist movement, sat bound in a corner, looking shell-shocked. None of them had anticipated dealing with physical resistance. In their world, combat was something delegated to machines, not personally experienced. The primary systems are too damaged to bring online quickly, Technics reported, her wings vibrating with anxiety. But I can reroute emergency power through the secondary grid. Do it, Jack instructed, pacing the room with restless energy. Priority to life support and internal communications. As Technics worked, I noticed Jack examining the disabled security drones with professional interest. He picked up a broken component, turning it over in his hands. These weren't just disabled, he observed. They were specifically targeted. Someone knew exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Lordax moved closer, his scaled face twisted in what I recognized as concern. The Purist movement doesn't have that kind of tactical knowledge. Jack nodded grimly. Which means these 4 are just the muscle. The brains of the operation is still out there. No sooner had he spoken than the station's emergency system crackled to life with a message that chilled my blood. Attention delegates, came a distorted voice. This station is now under the control of the true Confederation. The inclusion of primitives in our civilized society ends today. The human delegation will be eliminated as an example, and the Centennial Peace Summit will establish new protocols for proper galactic order. Jack's expression darkened. Charming fellow, he muttered. Technics, can you trace that transmission? Central hub, 3 levels up, she confirmed. But the corridors between here and there are still in lockdown. Jack gazed around the engineering room, taking inventory of available resources. His eyes settled on a maintenance shaft entrance in the ceiling. Those run throughout the station? He asked. Technics nodded. Yes, but they're extremely confined. Designed for maintenance drones, not biologicals. A slow smile spread across Jack's face. Good thing I'm not claustrophobic. What followed was a demonstration of what humans call improvisation, a concept that I've since come to both admire and fear in equal measure. Using components salvaged from the disabled drones and tools from the engineering bay, Jack constructed what he called basic defensive equipment. This included a makeshift stun baton, a crude but effective body shield, and most impressively, a set of climbing tools for navigating the maintenance shafts. I learned a long time ago, he explained as he worked with remarkable dexterity, that the difference between winning and losing often comes down to who can adapt faster to changing circumstances. Maeve watched him with fascination, her skin shifting through shades of blue that indicated deep intellectual interest. This is why humans succeeded on a death world, she observed. Your entire evolutionary history is built around adapting to hostile conditions. Jack shrugged. We just call it making do with what you've got. When his preparations were complete, Jack outlined a simple but effective plan. Technics would continue working to restore critical systems. Lortax would secure our position and guard the prisoners. Maeve, with her knowledge of human combat techniques, would accompany me to the delegation chamber to organize the protection of the other representatives. And Jack? Jack would take the fight directly to the mastermind. Absolutely not, I protested. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. With all due respect, Krax, Jack replied, testing the weight of his improvised weapons, I'm the only one here trained for this. And frankly, where I'm going, anyone else would just slow me down. Before I could argue further, he was already hauling himself into the maintenance shaft, moving with a fluid efficiency that belied his species' reputation for clumsiness. As Maeve and I made our way back to the delegation chamber through newly unlocked corridors, we encountered scenes of chaos. Without their automated systems, many delegates were completely disoriented, unable to navigate or communicate effectively. The concept of physically managing a crisis was so foreign that some had simply remained exactly where they were when the systems failed. They've outsourced their survival instincts, Maeve observed quietly. Automated not just their defenses, but their basic responses to danger. Meanwhile, through the emergency communication units technics had restored, we received intermittent updates from Jack as he made his way through the station's infrastructure. His breathing was controlled but audible as he narrated his progress. Passing Junction 7, signs of sabotage consistent with the engineering hub, these guys weren't subtle. Occasionally, we'd hear sounds of conflict, grunts of exertion, the clang of his improvised weapons against station infrastructure, and once, a startling crash followed by Jack's wry comment, "Gravity's still a harsh mistress, even in space." By the time we reached the delegation chamber and had begun organizing the confused representatives, word had spread about what was happening. The Deathworlder was physically hunting down the perpetrators while the rest of the advanced species waited for automated systems to save them. When the station lights suddenly blazed back to full power, a cheer erupted through the chamber. Moments later, Jack's voice came over the now functional announcement system. "Ladies, gentlemen, and other distinguished delegates," he said, sounding slightly out of breath. I'm pleased to inform you that the main orchestrator of today's unpleasantness has been convinced to surrender. Normal station functions should be restoring shortly." When Jack finally appeared at the chamber entrance, he presented a sight I'll never forget. His uniform was torn in several places, there was a darkening bruise on his cheekbone, and he was firmly gripping the arm of a disheveled draconian wearing the insignia of a station security lieutenant. "May I present Lieutenant Commander Vex," Jack announced to the stunned audience, mastermind of the purist plot and, until about 10 minutes ago, a true believer in the superiority of automated warfare. Jack's grin was almost predatory. I believe he's had a change of heart on that particular philosophy. The lieutenant, I couldn't help but notice, was looking at Jack with an expression I'd never seen on a draconian face before, unmistakable fear. The aftermath of what would later be called the Summit incident unfolded with remarkable swiftness. Security drones, once restored to operation, took custody of the purist conspirators. The damaged systems were repaired, the summit schedule was adjusted, and within 6 hours, it was almost possible to pretend nothing unusual had happened. Almost, but not quite, because something fundamental had shifted in how the Galactic Confederation viewed their human guests. In the delegate lounge, where I found Jack nursing something the food synthesizer had approximated as coffee, the change was palpable. Representatives who had earlier kept a careful distance now approached with cautious respect. Ambassador Zrel, still on his hover platform but noticeably less condescending, even offered what passed for an apology in Phalanx culture. It seems, he conceded with elaborate formality, that there are certain advantages to maintaining one's primitive capabilities alongside technological advancement. Jack just smiled and raised his cup in acknowledgement. The bruise on his face was now being treated by a medical drone, which seemed oddly appropriate, the merging of biological grit and technological convenience. Technics buzzed around him with unconcealed admiration, peppering him with technical questions about his improvised equipment. The way you repurposed the drone servos for your climbing apparatus was inspired, completely outside standard engineering parameters. "Necessity is the mother of invention," Jack replied with a shrug. "When the fancy tools fail, you go back to basics." Even Lord Tax, the station's security chief, approached with a newfound respect. "The Confederation Security Council has requested a full briefing on human combat techniques," he informed Jack. "They're reconsidering certain aspects of our defense protocols." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The very qualities that had made humans objects of concern, their hands-on approach to everything from diplomacy to warfare, were now being viewed as valuable failsafes in a galaxy perhaps too dependent on automation. Later that evening, as the summit's opening ceremony finally proceeded with significantly enhanced security, I found myself standing next to Jack on an observation deck overlooking the nebula. The station's transparent walls offered a breathtaking view of swirling cosmic gases illuminated by distant stars. "Quite a first day on the job," I remarked. Jack laughed, the sound more relaxed than I'd heard it before. "If this is diplomacy, I'm starting to understand why they sent a combat veteran." "You've certainly made an impression," I admitted, though perhaps not the one Earth was expecting. "Is that a bad thing?" I considered the question carefully. "No," I finally decided. "I think it was exactly what the Confederation needed, a reminder that there's value in doing things the hard way sometimes." Jack gazed out at the nebula, his expression thoughtful. "You know what's funny? On Earth, I'm considered hopelessly old-fashioned. I still prefer paper books to neural downloads. I fix my own vehicle instead of letting the automated systems handle it. My colleagues think I'm a dinosaur. And yet here, you're considered dangerously advanced, a species that masters technology but refuses to be mastered by it. There's probably a sweet spot somewhere in the middle, Jack suggested. As we watched the ceremonial procession below with representatives from across the galaxy formally initiating the Peace Summit, I noticed something unexpected. Several delegates from traditionally technophilic species had dismissed their robotic attendants, choosing instead to handle their own protocols. It seems you've started a trend, I observed. Jack smiled, the Deathworlder effect. We tend to make an impression. The next morning, the summit officially recognized Earth as a provisional member of the Galactic Confederation. The vote was unanimous, a first in Confederation history. The official citation made special mention of humanity's unique adaptability and resilience in crisis situations. As I finalized my report to the High Council, I found myself adding a personal observation. Perhaps the true mark of an advanced civilization is not how far it removes itself from its origins, but how it integrates its past with its future. In this, humanity may have lessons to teach us all. Commander Jack Cooper returned to Earth 3 days later with the formal invitation for humanity to join the galactic community. I'm told the response from Earth's unified government was characteristically human, about damn time. As for me, after 216 cycles of diplomatic service, I've requested a new assignment, cultural attached to Earth. I've developed a certain appreciation for species that still know how to use their hands. After all, in a galaxy full of automated perfection, sometimes you need someone willing to get their hands dirty, even if they're Deathworlders.